This is the story of the Bond bug, as much a part of the 70s as the iconic rally chopper. But was it a 70s icon, or just an oddity? Let me know what you think. So before we get into the history of the Bond bug, I've got a question for you. Do you know the link between the rally chopper, the Bond bug, and Luke Skywalker? Well, stay tuned to find out. Our story involves two rival companies, Reliant and Bond. The Reliant Motor Company was formed in 1935 when they began building three-wheelers at Tamworth in Staffordshire. The Bond minicar, a three-wheel vehicle designed by Lawrence Bond, went into production in 1949 in Preston, Lancashire, by Sharps Commercials, who were part of the Loxhams and Bradshaw group of companies. In 1963, they began to produce a four-wheel vehicle, the Equip, built in association with Standard Triumph, and its success led the company to change its name to Bond Cars Limited in 1964. Now, back in 1962, when Reliant launched the Regal, they'd hoped to appeal to younger buyers with a more sporty version, and they began to explore this further. As early as 1964, design sketches were completed by Ogle. The body was more wedge-shaped with some rounded edges, and it was to be called the Reliant Rogue. But the management at Reliant were concerned it looked too strange, and it may hurt their brand identity, and it was never put into production. Meanwhile, back at Bond in 1968, Loxham and Bradshaw had been acquired by Dutton Forshaw. Bond was the only manufacturing part of the group and didn't fit in, and so it was put up for sale. Following an unsuccessful buyout attempt by the Bond management, in February 1969, Bond were bought out by Reliant. The Bond bug was about to be born. Reliant commissioned Tom Carron of Ogle Design in Letchworth to alter the Rogue design, and the car would become a Bond vehicle. The bug was based on Chief Engineer John Crosswaite's newly designed chassis and used a mix of Regal parts and running gear designed for the Robin, which was due to be launched in 1974. Initially put into production from March 1970 at the Bond factory in Preston, it was successfully launched in June 1970, but by the end of June, production transferred to Tamworth. By acquiring Bond, Reliant had hoped to gain access to the Triumph network for distribution. Unfortunately, the Leyland Group was undergoing restructuring, and it meant that they lost access. Economically, it didn't make sense to keep both production facilities open. The remaining unfinished Equips continued to be built at Preston until the last one rolled off the line in October 1970, and by December 1970 the factory had been completely cleared and it was closed for good. Launched in 1970, like the Model T, the Bond bug was available in any colour so long as it was tangerine orange. It was the only colour available. However, they did build 6 white cars for a Rothmans cigarette promotion, and they were registered between AME191H through to AME196H, and the first one was also used for a Cape Fruit advert. At least 3 of these vehicles are still known to exist. The bug was 9 foot 2 inches long, had a 700cc engine, and was capable of 76 miles an hour, although it had a speedo which showed up to 100. It cost £629, and in comparison, The basic 850cc Mini at that time cost £620. The model lineup consisted of the 700, the 700E and the 700ES. The 700 was planned as a base model and was to be sold with no refinements. The hinged canopy was to be held open with the prop. There were to be no side screens, but only one example is known to have been built in May 1970. The 700E, a deluxe version, had side screens, a heater, a telescopic canopy damper, a canopy lock, polished hubcaps, chrome glazing rubber trim, and a driver's sun visor, as well as an interior light. The 700ES had the specification of the 700E, but with a higher compression engine. It also had low-profile tyres, a spare wheel, and a rubber front bumper, and it had wing mirrors, mud flaps, and extras such as side and centre seat supports, twin horns, and a Formula One steering wheel. In October 73, Reliant launched the Bondbug 750ES, which now had a 748cc engine, but less than 200 were built. After completion of approximately 2,272 vehicles, production of the Bondbug ended in May 1974. The Bondbug hadn't been as successful as Reliant had hoped for, and it also needed to stop production in order to make way for the new model that was to be released, the Robin. Sadly, it also meant the end of the Bond name as a vehicle manufacturer. But Reliant continued to manufacture vehicles under their own name. So I posed the question earlier, what's the link between the Rally Chopper, the Bondbug and Luke Skywalker? Well, the answer is Tom Carron, and that's because he designed the Bondbug, and he was also credited as the designer of the chopper. However, this was contested by Rally's chief of design from 1996 until his death in 2012. In his archive, which was sold in 2018, it's claimed that documents were found to support this. And it's claimed that the American company Schwinn were producing a rugged bike for kids, and Rally wanted a share of that market. And so they sent the chief of design to America for a 3-week fact-finding mission. And this resulted in an envelope sketch that provided the inspiration. And this was offered to Ogle, who designed the product. The archive reveals that the Design Council did not consult Rally before citing Tom Carron as designer of the chopper, and the Design Museum merely acknowledged Carron as a designer of the finished product. Now, Luke Skywalker, what's the link there? Well, again, it's Tom Carron, because he also designed Luke Skywalker's land speeder for the Star Wars film. And it was also built around the chassis of a Bondbug. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope you found it informative. There may be a few discrepancies in it. There may be things that you know that I don't. So by all means, please do comment. And I am aware that although I've said that there was 2,272 cars built, that number may be slightly incorrect because the Reliant site had the total number of cars built as being 2,268. So it's somewhere between there and 2272. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.